The story begins with the humble life of Jed Clampett, a man of simple means, a mountaineer who barely managed to keep his family fed. Life was a constant, backbreaking struggle against the harsh elements of the hills. Then, one fateful day, while Jed was out hunting for dinner, the earth beneath his feet offered up a strange, bubbling surprise. It was oil, the thick, black gold, the Texas tea that would change their destiny forever. The very next moment, Jed found himself a millionaire. The local kinfolk, wise in their own way, urged him to leave the familiar mountains behind. They insisted that California was the place he ought to be, the land of promise and sunshine. So, the family loaded up the old truck, packed their meager belongings, and began the long journey toward Beverly Hills. They arrived in a place of swimming pools and movie stars, becoming the unlikely stars of their own new world as the Beverly Hillbillies. Despite their new wealth, the journey had not been without its hardships. Jed recalled spending some truly miserable nights during their transition. One night in particular stood out, a night where the sleeping arrangements on the beach were definitely for the birds. It is one thing to be awakened in the morning by the gentle touch of the sun hitting you in the eye, but it is an entirely different and much less pleasant thing to be awakened by the cold tides slapping you directly in the face. Jed mused that the next time those grunions decided they wanted to invade the beach, they could have it all to themselves. The entire family had suffered through a miserable night, and they were all facing a long drive home, with no real use in rehashing the details of the ordeal. Jed agreed, noting that it was best to put the experience behind them. Meanwhile, Boob had a different tale of woe. While the others thought they had a bad night, he claimed to have spent his entire night in the ocean. Jed retorted that it was entirely his own fault for trying to swim to the island of Grunt. Boob defended his actions, asking if there could be a better reason to swim than the fact that there was nothing there but women. Jed remained unconvinced, and Boob lamented that he would have made it to his destination if he had not run into a particularly ferocious old shark. The shark had gotten the first lick in, but Boob had fought back, wrestling the creature with the intensity of a man possessed. The conversation shifted to the prisoners that Miss Jane had caught. Granny inquired if there were any men among that bunch of grunions, and Kelly confirmed that they were all girl prisoners. They had witnessed Miss Jane leading them down the beach as they chanted their war cry, demanding their place in the sun. Granny, unimpressed by the spectacle, remarked that she had heard their glee club and certainly did not need a solo. The mystery of the name Grunt was soon explained. It was a name chosen because it epitomized dishonesty. The mythical island had been invented solely to trick the Clabbards into keeping their money in the bank, and the ruse had actually worked. Now, the tables were turning, and they were hanging the culprits with their own rope. The chief, however, refused to listen to any pleas for negotiation, dismissing their grievances with a cold heart. He remained unyielding, despite the girls insisting that they were a delight to work for and that he was merely a pussycat. The truth was that he had tried every dirty, rotten trick in the book, and he still had a few left in his arsenal. The conflict escalated at Malibu, where the girls marched up and down the beach, chanting their slogans and refusing to give in. They pledged to fight until they won. As the situation grew tense, they demanded higher wages and better hospitalization benefits. The girls eventually found themselves at the Clampetts' mansion, which they hoped would serve as a headquarters for their cause. They wanted the Clampetts to hear the full story of the tyranny and cruelty they had faced at the hands of the bank. Jed, ever the mediator, tried to understand both sides of the story. He found it hard to believe that the girls were truly dangerous, seeing them as delicate creatures who deserved to be treated with kindness. Even as the accusations flew, Jed maintained a calm demeanor, trying to defuse the anger and frustration that filled the air. Mr. Drysdale, however, continued to weave his web of deceit, claiming that the girls had brainwashed Miss Jane. He insisted that they had taken control of her mind and filled her with hate. The reality of the situation was far more complex, with the girls seeking nothing more than the fairness and honesty they felt they had been denied for far too long. As the tension reached a boiling point, the Clampetts found themselves caught in the middle of a battle that involved not just money and status, but the fundamental treatment of people. In the end, it was the persistent efforts of the girls, supported by the honest, down-to-earth perspective of the Clampetts that began to crack the facade of the bank. The girls, through their resilience, showed that they would not be easily intimidated. They stood their ground, demanding that their voices be heard. Jed, looking at the entire situation with his characteristic wisdom, realized that the truth was often obscured by greed and misunderstanding. He continued to advocate for peace, urging everyone to put aside their differences and talk things through. He believed that even the most difficult problems could be solved if people acted with a little more humanity and a lot less ego. As the day drew to a close, and the various parties found themselves at a crossroads, there was a sense of a pending resolution. The girls had proven their strength, the Clampetts had provided a refuge, and the truth, no matter how much some tried to hide it, was beginning to come to light. The journey from the mountains to the mansions of Beverly Hills had taught the Clampetts a great deal about the world, but it had also shown them that people are the same wherever you go. There are always those who seek to take advantage of others, and there are always those who stand up for what they believe is right. Jed stood on the porch of his mansion, looking out over the sprawling landscape of his new life. He missed the simplicity of the hill sometimes, but he also valued the lessons he had learned along the way. He had seen the power of unity, the strength of a collective voice, and the importance of holding onto one's principles, even when the world tried to sway them. He knew that the fight for fairness was never truly over, but he was hopeful that, bit by bit, things would improve. He turned back toward his home, ready to welcome his kin and his new acquaintances for a heap-in, help-in of their famous hospitality. It had been a long, strange, and at times miserable road, but he was grateful for every step, for it had led them to where they were, and it had shown them the true value of kindness, honesty, and a good, hearty laugh in the face of adversity. The story of the Clampetts continued, a testament to the idea that no matter how much things change, the heart of a person remains the true measure of their worth. And so, the mountain folk, once poor in everything but spirit, had found that the greatest treasures were not found in the ground, but in the people they met and the lives they touched along the way.